questions. He's in Connecticut right now, but he's getting ready to move out to beautiful British Columbia here in a little bit. Ryan Donald, former assistant coach at Yale University. Now he's going to be the head coach out in the BCHL with the expansion franchise Cranbrook Bucks. Ryan, what's going on today?
Not much. Just trying to enjoy this quarantine lifestyle.
How's that going for you?
It's been good. It's a little repetitive, but we're good. We're happy. We're healthy, which is the important part.
That's good too. And you got a couple little ones right around the same age as my little ones too. So how are they doing?
They're doing well. A little stir crazy. Missing going to the park, missing going to school, missing seeing friends and stuff. But young enough where my wife and I aren't quite, homeschool teaching or anything like that. We're able to kind of give them small doses of stuff, but young enough, where they're just enjoying it.
Nice. Can you imagine homeschooling right now?
It'd be chaos. That's for sure. A lot of people, little admirable people out there doing that. But yeah, it's a challenge, but hopefully it's something we can all learn from.
Yeah, teacher salary should be tripled.
Oh yeah, no, I believe it.
Good stuff, man. Well, appreciate you coming on. We'll get right into it. So
sure.
You're heading back out west. You grew up out west, not quite as west as BC. You grew up right outside of Edmonton in Alberta. You grew up right after the Gretzky years. And so talk to us a little bit about what you remember from your childhood right after Gretzky made his run there in Edmonton and how it allowed you to fall in love with the game there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was, you kind of now that, you would have been around it with the minor hockey stuff, myself too. You look at Pittsburgh, you look at some of these places where they've had, a real run of success, and then the hockey kind of just takes off. I'm not sure if Edmonton was like that. Obviously, I wasn't there beforehand to really know, but after, I was mid-'80s into early '90s playing my minor hockey, and it was the number one thing to do. That was almost an automatic that you were playing hockey in the wintertime, and kind of built your sports year around that in a lot of ways. Found some summer sports to do in the other months, but your focus was on the minor hockey stuff and the hockey schools and clinics, and maybe not quite to the extent they are today where it's almost 12 months, but you were definitely wanted to be a hockey player, and the Oilers were great. I was a little young for a lot of the cups, but so I was kind of a mid-'90s fan, which was a grind, but really test your character, which is good, and so hopefully that's gonna pay off for us here in the next couple of years.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, it's funny. Like I just got done. So we're recording this on a Monday, right after the Last Dance, the final episode of the Last Dance with Chicago Bulls. And I grew up in the 90s when the Bulls had their run going. So that was a lot of like reminiscing and everything. It's so true. Do you feel like the Oilers and how well they did in your early childhood had a lot to do with like you just falling in love with sports in general? Because I look back to my days with the Bulls in Chicago, and like I played so much basketball because the Bulls were so good, but hockey was my main sport. But still, like, we're all in the front yard, or on the driveways with our tongues hanging out because we want to be like MJ and things like that. So is it similar to you up in Edmonton with that?
I think so, probably a little bit. It definitely kind of, Gretzky had the jersey tuck and all that kind of stuff that you kind of crept in its way into the game. Had the blue holders on the skates, so kids were wearing those, and it's true. That's kind of, you're playing street hockey, and those are the guys you wanted to be. And it was a fun era to be, and for me, obviously, they got traded down to LA and kind of going through that and trying to emerge from it and figure out, what the Oilers hockey was like and kind of who your teams were going to be. I'm an Oilers fan, always have been, always will be, I think. But I grew up loving the Vancouver Canucks. I grew up loving Toronto Maple Leafs with Felix Potvin there's some good good teams in those kind of mid-'90s years where Edmonton wasn't really playing in the spring, so we had to find other teams to follow. But I think so for sure. I think it kind of like I said with Pittsburgh. Some of these programs that have their youth programs have really kind of taken off and blossomed because of the interest. And you see the kids wearing 87 and now they're wearing 97 and 88s and they just follow the kids. And Chicago's probably going through a little bit of that too with what it's always been a hockey hotbed there. But with what the Blackhawks did for a while there with their 3 Stanley Cups too.
Yeah, big time. I mean, pretty much every team has an 88 and a 19 in Chicago with Kane and Taves, and yeah, it's like when I was growing up in Chicago, it was one of those times where like the owner didn't put home games on TV, and it was you can hear crickets in the arenas. But they figured it out, and hopefully they can keep it up. They had a couple down years here lately, but
that's nothing for if you're an Oilers fan.
I was gonna say I can't really complain. Although I did grow up a Red Wings fan because the Hawks were so bad when in my formidable years, and I think they were close to breaking records of the least amount of points in a year. But it is what it is. Stevie Y's going to get him back. All right, well, cool. Let's go on to the next question here. So we had talked about you got the chance to play college hockey at Yale. And with that, your head coach who you ended up coaching with, we'll ask about that in a second, got to play for Keith Allain, who one of the best. He's coached in the U.S. in the Olympics. He's coached in the NHL, coached World Juniors, all that kind of stuff. What was it like to play for Keith? And, specifically, you kind of got there right around the same time that the program was changing and he was coming in. And so what was it like from when, he first came in and it was a little bit tougher and you had to change a bunch of things to where you left when you were winning championships and stuff?
Yeah, I think it was a really neat opportunity for me, looking back now that I am a coach. That was 15 years ago to kind of understand what went on and kind of the inner workings of that. I wasn't recruited by Keith. I didn't really know his background or the pedigree. I was recruited by the previous head coach and his staff. And so Keith and I kind of came to campus at the same time. And it's a bit of a blessing in disguise because I say now, I don't know if he would have ever even recruited a player like myself or anything like that. He was kind of stuck with me. But to see that change in culture and work, I don't want to say work ethic because guys work hard, but just the vision and the commitment and the investment that he expected out of you to be, a part of the Yale men's hockey program. I think that might have shifted. And I think it was, for me, it was a great learning experience, whether I knew it at the time or not. And it was good for me and truthfully our class. It's kind of there's no right, wrong answer. You kind of batted around a little bit in the office as coaches, but we got to play a lot. It was a new program. Trying to get some. Our class was obviously the youngest of the group, and getting a chance to play. My classmates, a couple of them went on to have really productive college careers and pro careers after that. And is that because our first year at Yale we were able to just kind of play and play and play? Maybe. I don't know if I would have turned out to be the player I was either, but yeah, to see the kind of the commitment and what our work week, it shifted and it looked a little different, and there was some different, kind of meeting of the minds with some of the older players that had been around and trying to get everybody on board, and that's part of that process, I think, of changing the culture and shifting things and shifting your vision. So, but no, you touched on Keith and his background, and it was for me, not being recruited by him, but getting to play for him was awesome, and having been able to coach with him the past 5 years was really cool as well.
Well, let's get into that because I'm in a similar situation to you where I was able to coach with the guy that coached me in college hockey, and you learn a lot about the man from when you were a player to when you were a coach. And there's so much that you really don't know as a player, as you talked about the whole process of coaching and how much goes into it. But also, like for me, I felt like I got to know him on a much different level having worked with Shafe rather than when I played for him. So what were some things that you learned in your process from going from player to coach, and specifically what about Keith in your mind maybe you learned and maybe changed?
I think first of all, you get to know them on a different level than you did as a player. I think for a while, there's a lot of times you're still looking at him as though he was your coach. I played for, between the time I graduated and came back as a coach was 5 years. So there was still a little bit of that, that element where, you're used to kind of seeing him in that light, player-coach relationship and just kind of doing and taking his guidance and following, right? Which is one element of a player. And now to be sitting there and and wanting your input or your suggestions, or what do you think we should do, systems wise or personnel wise, or all the little details that go into your day to day. And that was one of the things I think, for him, and what I could take away from my time working for him was just the amount of preparation that goes into everything, and being up late at night, early in the morning, thinking about practice, thinking about travel, thinking about your games, thinking about personnel, recruiting, all of those things. I mean, there's a million different facets of what we do, particularly at the college level. But kind of the investment that it does take, and thinking things through, and taking the time to really evaluate all the different small elements that you really don't think of as a player. A lot of times as a player, you're I've said it before, but you feel like a goldfish. You're just kind of following with the rest of the group. You're not really thinking, but okay, I got to be on the bus by 10 o'clock, or I got to be at the rink 45 minutes before to do this, or an hour before to do that, but why do all those things happen? And understanding kind of the process that goes into it. And then I touched on it briefly, but you get to know them as a person, and you get to understand what makes them tick, and their families, and the stresses, and the things that go on in their lives, and it's kind of a cool other layer to learn about.
Yeah, it definitely is. And it's so funny. Like when you get into the belly of the beast and you're involved in the planning of what goes on.
Oh yeah.
You think as a player, right? Like the coaches just kind of sit around and do video and drink coffee and whatever during the day, and it's then you strap on the shoes and you put your work boots on to go to work as a coach, and it's like, oh boy, there's a lot more that goes into this than meets the eye, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, but it's good, and I think the good ones allow you to do that work. And kind of, there's some element of learning on your own, and even as parents, we talked about it earlier, you kind of do that with your kids a little bit. You can't follow them around all day long. You're not going to follow them around your whole life, but you let them fall, you let them understand. Okay, that hurt, but I'm going to survive, and you kind of pick yourself up. And just like as a coach, I mean, good coaches hire people, and they trust the people that they're hiring. They hire them for a reason, and they let them do their work. And the kind of the mindset, right? If I wanted to look over the shoulder of my assistant now as a head coach, I wouldn't hire one. I just do that work myself if I'm going to make sure that I'm dotting their I's and crossing their T's all day long. But you bring the right people in, you trust them, you let them go to work, and then you kind of correct, and you bring them back onto the straight and narrow when they fall off, or sometimes you got to pick them up, dust them off, and send it back out. But that's certainly an element of it, and getting to learn through that whole process was really great for me.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. So as a coach there, you were primarily tasked with coaching a lot of the defense, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and you were one of the things when we talk about hockey development, a lot of times you talk about like the offensive side, wanting offensive D-men, getting up to play, all that kind of stuff. But in your teachings with your D, and the way that I think you played based on the role that you played too, you were kind of like a shutdown, rugged, tough defenseman. You had a few penalty minutes in your day, especially when you played pro hockey and stuff too. So I wanted, so much talk gets, there's so much hockey talk about the offensive side of D-men now, but there's not a ton about that shutdown, D-man who also is really important to a hockey team. So for you as a more defensively minded coach in the way that you played, what are like a couple different things that you would recommend for some of the players that their role is more of like a shutdown guy to get in the other team's face, be good defensively type of situation?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the emphasis does fall towards the offensive side of the game. Whether obviously it's an important part of the game. There's no question. Defending is important, but I think from an individual standpoint, there's a lot of guys that when you're out watching young hockey players and you're going through the recruiting process with guys, and you see a lot of kids that that's what their emphasis is. That's what they work on. They got the skill stuff. They get individual coaches that they're working on, what they're doing with the puck. But what are they doing when they don't have it? That's another huge element of the game. In fact, almost probably 90% of the game for most is playing away from it, trying to get it back and defending. And as a defensive defenseman, it's a bit of a challenge sometimes because the numbers aren't going to show up when you're looking at box scores and points and things like that. It's not always going to jump off the page. But I think when you're evaluating talent, you're looking at players like that. You're looking for for that skill set, for guys that can defend and can defend at a high level. Because at the end of the day, you need guys that can do that.
So what are some of those pieces of that skill set you think of those types of players that you're looking at?
I think, skating, I think your feet, those are two things. That's one thing that I would say is never good enough. Even you look at the NHL level, those guys are probably hearing it every day too. That their feet have to get quicker, they have to get better, cleaner. So I think footwork, being able to skate, being able to manage the pace, adjust your speed, your depth, side to side. I think that stuff's important. Defending with your stick is one thing that our guys here at Yale probably get tired of me yelling at them about it, but it's something. It's your best weapon. It makes you 7 feet longer, and to have that and in the right place, not just there because your coach said it's there, but using it as a tool. I think is one thing, and then ultimately when you get into physical confrontations, understanding what your limitations are, what your strengths are. Some guys are going to be my size, 6'3". Some guys will be your size. They're what? I
was 5'6" in the program, so we'll go with that.
5'4". Some
Yep.
guys will be smaller, and you got to understand. There's some strengths there too, the lower center of gravity, and being able to use your body effectively and smartly. And you look at the way the game is now. There's more and more guys that are undersized defensemen that are playing, and you've got to be able to. So it's kind of a work in progress for everybody, but there's no one size fits all. But I think kind of the willingness and the compete and the drive are a couple things that are going to be needed if you're going to play that way.
For sure. Well, let's talk about that undersized D-man and playing. Let's talk about maybe one-on-one or taking people on in smaller areas, maybe in the corners or in front of the net. Because let's face it, most of the people that play hockey are not 6'3" or 6'4". So what do you think are some important things playing defensively from a smaller player standpoint that you might teach differently than somebody that may be a little bit bigger?
Yeah, I think defending kind of with your hips, defending with almost your back a little bit is something that I tried to instill in a couple of our smaller guys and was really working towards because we had a couple of them here. I think the Torrey Krugs, the guys that they're no slouch defensively. Watching guys like that, what makes them really effective? Is it winning the ice before kind of that puck battle starts? That's one key component of it. But ultimately, having a good stick, you're not going to outmuscle guys every single time and be able to throw them up against the glass and contain them. But you can have a smart stick and locate pucks and just be kind of quick stick lifts and be able to skate away and use your speed and your agility to defend by putting the puck on your stick. But certainly trying to engage guys smartly and kind of read the play, because obviously that becomes a real added benefit for those guys and needs to be a strength, because picking up when other guys are going to spin, which direction they're going to go, and kind of just beating them by that half a step and then being able to use quickness.
Yeah, and one of the things that you talked about was winning the ice before you get to the battle or before you get to the puck. I've never heard that before, but I love that saying. Can you expand a little bit on that?
I think it's just a matter of what's the best way to put it? If you're trying to get, if you start at the same spot and you're trying to get to a puck that's 10 feet away, a lot of times that puck race is going to be won in 2 steps. Who's the quickest in, who drives into the other guy's lane, and now you make them have to go around you to get to the puck. And I think that's just kind of a little example of it, right? And that happens at different spots. That happens whether it's you and me racing for a puck, whether it's I think about a box out. If I'm a defenseman and the puck goes to the point, well, I've got to now read where you, Topher, the forward, are trying to go to get to the front of the net, and I'll just go stand there. Right now, you've got to decide. You're going to go in front of me, behind me, and I can adjust accordingly to kind of engage you in a spot where I would rather engage you than let you get to the net front and then try to shove you out of the way, because it's just not going to work.
Love that. I love that. I would have beat you to the net though. But anyways, no, I'm kidding. That's really good stuff. Talking about defensive, I do like a lot of the conversations that we have as coaches. A lot of times is teaching the offensive side. Everybody wants to teach that, but that defensive side, that's made a lot of money for a lot of people by being able to play well that way.
Yeah, and it gives you an opportunity to play. Like I'm thinking, you talk about it as the offensive skills and what kids are working on. That's great. But even at the college level, at the junior level, at the pro level, if you can't defend, you can't play. And it's, unless you're an elite talent, you're Quinn Hughes, some of those guys, Cale Makar's now, like you might be able to play, but you've got to be able to defend in your own end, and it's going to let you get your legs under you, and then be able to play and grow and kind of earn your coach's trust, and then add the offensive piece afterwards. But if you're coming in and you're expecting to just not have to defend in your own end and have the offense handed to you, it's never going to work. So
you're going to have a short career.
Right? Then go on. What's that? Sorry?
I said you're going to have a short career if you don't worry about the defensive side of the puck. But that's the other thing too. I think that's important for youth coaches to understand. Maybe maybe at every level, but especially when you get a little bit older, at the bantam, the midget age. Like if you're letting kids do whatever they want, and you're not teaching them the defensive side of the puck, you are severely hampering their ability to play at the next levels. And I'm not talking about systems and structure and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about, number one, just the fact that you care about it and you're willing to buy in and listen to playing defensively. But number two, all those little things that you were talking about, the stick positioning, winning the ice, head on a swivel, communication, like those are all things that can translate to the next level. And yeah, I mean, if you're the best player on your midget team, you're probably not going to be the best player on your junior team. And if you're the best player on your junior team, you're probably not going to be the best player on your college team. Maybe some, but not a ton. If you're the best player on your college team, you're very rarely going to be one of the best players on your pro team. So you're going to have to learn how to play those different roles to prolong your career. And I think that's one thing we did and Shafe did at Cornell really, really well, was he made sure that guys were responsible both ways. And you see players that were top two line players at Cornell go on to have really nice careers at the next level, being a shutdown guy or a penalty kill guy or whatever it may be, just because they're not going to beat Ovechkin out for that spot on the power play. So it's a huge part of it.
Yeah, and it's easier to learn when you're young, that's for sure. And you're trying to pick it up once you're at the Division I level or at the junior level, and you don't have that 6-month period where you're with your midget team to learn it. You've got, particularly junior or pro, you've got, 3 weeks to a month, and then they're moving by you. So it's important to have.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's move on here a little bit. I love that conversation, but coming in as a former assistant coach at the Division I level, for me, I pretty much ask every single one of the coaches that have coached in college this question, because it's the question that I get the most. And it's when you're sitting and you're evaluating, you're up in the stands and you're thinking, hey, I need this person to be a part of Yale University, or now I need this person to be a part of Cranbrook. What do you think are the 2 or 3 things that are most important as you're evaluating players? Something that really makes you jump out of your seat to say, hey, like this kid could be a fit for what we're doing.
Yeah, I think, I think from a skills perspective, you want to have kind of that base level, whether it's skating, whether it's puck skills, all the agility, all of those different things. But ultimately, like, I think you've got to have just a drive. I think you've got to be competitive in your own way, but just find, the guys that are just gamers, right? Guys that want to play, guys that doesn't matter what the score is or who they're playing with or what their line mates are. It's a Sunday game, it's a Friday night game, that stuff doesn't matter to them, but they want to play. And they take it seriously, and they kind of wear it on their sleeve. They're happy when they win, they're sad when they lose. Shows that they're invested in it. But just, kind of that compete, whether it's on pucks, whether it's on back checks, whether it's in moments, normally that are a little outside when you have the puck, or when the offense is there, because I think everybody gets motivated for that, the offensive side and scoring and that kind of stuff. But, how willing are they to block shots? How willing are they to, do the little things that really amount to winning in a lot of cases? What are they, are they leaders? Do they talk? Do they communicate? Do they know what's going on? And then kind of hockey sense, I think, is the other element of it, kind of awareness. Are they seeing things before they happen? Are they putting themselves in the right position? Or are they often half second late to things because they don't read it until, all of the cues are there. They're not reading, the early ones that sets the ball in motion, gets them ahead of the play a little bit. So I'd say kind of the hockey sense piece, but ultimately, you got to have the base level skills too, skating and the puck skills and shooting and just kind of the coordination and wiring and all of those things. But then you got to have that other level of drive too.
Yeah, the drive. It's I had a pro scout talk to me once about, like, his most important thing was going down and talking to a kid after a game. And I actually, it's funny, like I remember liking a kid in the BC league once, and team kind of got blown out. but I thought he played pretty well. I thought he was one of the only players on his team that did really well. And I went down to go talk to him after the game, smiles, and he was, happy and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was like, you guys just got smoked. Why are you so
Yeah.
happy? And I didn't end up
Yeah.
recruiting him.
Yeah. Well,
Like, you should be
that's the
pissed
thing.
off about this.
It's a catch-22, right? This whole business, because there's an individual element of it. I'm sure he's happy to be talking to college guys and kind of that next step. But then there's the team element of it too, right? Is that you got to wear that on your sleeve, and you're always trying to balance those two. There's no question about that, but it makes it challenging. And ultimately, there's a lot of players out there, right? When you're recruiting, you're looking at him as maybe one of 5 guys, academically, positionally, age, all those things that fit maybe what you're looking for, and they're maybe all relatively equal. And then there's those other elements that kind of tip one way or the other.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Yeah. Another story too. I was talking to a pro scout, and they said the most impressed they've ever been with a kid going down and talking to them after a game was Brock Besser. And so this was back when he was playing in the USHL. And members going down, they had lost the game, and first of all, he was really upset that they lost. But then, like, he could recount almost every play that was made during the game. So he was like, yeah, when this happened, I should have done this, and this play that this person made, and all that kind of stuff. And it just like, he was like, I knew that kid was going to be an NHL player after that, because he just, it's that hockey sense. It's that understanding of what's going on, that ability to recount, and just like, he loved to think about the game, It's just, it was interesting.
Yeah. It reminds me, there's a LeBron James interview. This is maybe a couple of years ago, where somebody was like critiquing something that he did, and then LeBron went on to like recount like 8 straight possessions or something. Like, well, which rebound did you mean? Because I did this, and they just went through the whole thing. It was wild. Yeah.
Yeah, I had Gabe Polsky on our podcast, who was the director of that In Search for Greatness movie, when he had who was it, Gretzky, Jerry Rice, and Pele were the 3 that he interviewed. And that was the one thing that he said, like, those guys could do incredibly. It's like they were geniuses in terms of recounting everything. Yeah. They could see and remember and feel. Like, he was like, Gretzky could remember every goal he's ever scored. And he scored a lot of them, type stuff, Yeah. So it's pretty cool. Yeah. Pretty cool with that. All right, moving on. Question 6 here. So you got the chance to play and coach junior hockey. You've had the chance to play and coach at the college level, and you've also played professional hockey. Yeah. What do you think are the biggest differences? Let's start going from junior to college, and then biggest differences from college to pro in terms of the way that the game is played, and maybe what you would emphasize as a coach.
Junior to college, a little bit more chaotic, I would say, a little bit higher pace. College, there's just so much more on the line. Every game you play, you get at the Ivy League level, you get 29 of them plus playoff, right? So it's you can't have nights off. You can't feel like you don't have the legs, and everything is so important, right? It's just this such a high concentration of everything on game night, and 2 games a week. You've got your school throughout the week, and then you've got 2 games, and that's what your focus is. Junior, there's a little bit more leeway in that. There's probably recounting it myself, there's some nights where the teams you were playing weren't as good, and then there was obviously nights where you're playing against really good teams. I don't know. I think college, just the level of parity in the game is much higher, where there's no nights off. Anybody can beat anybody, and the games are super important. Now you jump from that into the pro game. It's kind of certainly a higher skill. It's a different mentality, I always found, trying to find, particularly, and I don't want to speak for you, but coming from Yale and what we were able to achieve, and kind of the group and what our mindset was, where everything is about your university, everything's about Yale, and then now you've got to quickly turn and I liken it to almost like a private contractor. You're your own business now. And there's no loyalty. I shouldn't say it like that, but you're kind of going through the minors and trying to understand the process that nobody owes Ryan Donald anything. You've got to be better than the guy beside you, and then you get to play. And it's a little different mentality that way, where I mentioned it before, but you're trying to balance the team versus the individual. and it kind of begins to tip in towards the individual side of things, where you've got to be able to perform and do what you have to do, and kind of worry about yourself a little bit more that way. The game, obviously, more skilled. It's a lot more. The sense level of the players, I felt like, was a lot higher. So coaching wise, there was more, TV timeout in between periods, draw something on the board. Guys should understand it. Guys have been around the game long enough. Whereas I feel like whether it's college and junior, they need more practice reps in order to really feel like, hey, we're going to just flip from a 1-2-2 to a 2-1-2, or we're going to change this in the neutral zone to this, and it can be a little bit more of a challenge because guys maybe just don't have that experience and that same kind of sense or awareness level, or just kind of, like I said, the experience and the age and the wisdom sometimes. As you've played in so many different systems that it's easy to switch. At the college level, guys are playing primarily, for one coach and a pretty fixed set of what they're doing and their vision and maybe forecheck and different things like that over a 4-year period. Where now at the pro level, you're with guys that have done a lot of different things, and by then in your career, you've done a lot of different things.
Yeah, that's why I feel like coaching versatility is so important. And it even goes back to what we had talked about earlier, and coaching both sides of the puck, offensively and defensively. I think as a coach, especially at the younger levels, if you can provide versatility in a kid's game, it allows them to flourish, not just within different positions or whatever. Because that's one of the things we would ask players, like, if you're being, with the guys that we had in college, if you're being interviewed by a GM and they ask you, what position do you play? What's your answer? And they say, oh, D or right D or center or whatever. And no, whatever you want me to play. I can play all three. I have played all three. Just make yourself more versatile, and as a coach, like, especially at the younger levels, like, have kids playing different positions, have kids playing different systems, have kids doing different things, playing with different line mates or different D pairs. Just, I had one. It's funny. I had one coach that coached youth hockey last year. He's coached and played at in the NHL, and so he had one thing where he never had set lines. He had all throughout the years, like, they would, for a game or a couple games they would, but then he would switch things up. And he was telling me that a parent got really upset because, like, the kids would never find in any rhythm or whatever. And he was like, well, the kid's got to learn to play with different players if he wants to play at the higher levels. It's not just going to be, he can't play with the same person now. So that versatility is so important, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's exactly. It's more of, I guess, forward or D. Like, if I was a lefty, I played lefty, and that's that old adage. Like, if I'm only a lefty, I can't play my offside. I just cut every opportunity in half. In particular, if you're a forward, I'm only a center. I don't play the wing. Well, you're able to play 33% of the positions now, and when the Chicago Blackhawks call you and they need a left wing, are you gonna say, I'm good? Like, I only play somebody else. Like, no chance. Like, I would tell them I could play left wing. I'd tell them I could play goalie. You do anything to play at that higher level, right? So it's being versatile is a big piece of that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, moving on here now. So you just recently took the job as the coach with the Cranbrook Bucks. That's tough to say. Cranbrook Bucks. There we go.
That's not rolling off your tongue yet.
Not yet, anyway. Probably for you. But we haven't done with the Hockey Think Tank a ton. The BCHL is one of the top feeder leagues into the NCAA. I've been out to BC to recruit plenty of times, and so if you can, just tell us a little bit about the BCHL and what excites you the most about going and coaching at that level now.
Yeah, I'm excited, but I agree with you. I think it's, obviously the USHL has done a really good job in terms of their branding and being able to put guys into college. Give them a lot of credit for that. The BCHL is probably right behind them, my opinion. It's a different league, and I think you could attest to that, as you're recruiting and you're watching, and it helps. I shouldn't say helps. It fits players differently. The USHL is a great league. Is it the best league for every player? I wouldn't say that. I think guys need to be in an environment where they're set up to succeed. I think the BC League is you said it. There's more and more guys coming out of there going to college. Certainly the most in the CJHL in the Canadian Junior Leagues. And it's to me, the premier league to be in if you're wanting to go to college, if you're playing hockey in Canada. It's a beautiful province of British Columbia. You've been out there, you can probably attest to that. Some really good cities, and it's hockey markets too, which is fun. It's a lot of different places where a lot of people want to be a part of the program, part of the community, and support their local hockey team. So it's done a really good job the last few years with NHL draft picks and guys going on to play college hockey and having great careers. So I think it's a league that's beginning to get a lot more credibility over the past kind of 5-7 years, and hopefully continues on that path.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned that sometimes, so the USHL, in terms of, moving guys along to college hockey and with their draft picks and stuff, is, I would say the Premier League when it comes to that. But you mentioned, just from like a pure number standpoint, but you mentioned the fit might not be the right fit.
Right.
So expand on that a little bit. So if there's somebody that you think might be a better fit for the BC League rather than the USHL, what would that look like?
I think there's a bit more offensive creativity, a bit more leash for players. Somebody phrased it to me this way one time, and I felt it was pretty accurate. I think USHL, like I said, well-coached league, good skill, good everything. I think, they described it as a league that you wait for the other team to kind of make a mistake before you get your offense. You kind of coach that way. And I think the BC League, you're coached almost to create your own, right? You got to find a way to build some offense, whether it's through the neutral zone, offensive zone, things of that nature. And I felt like that was pretty accurate. And again, just player-wise, is it a fit, for a player to go and be a third, fourth line player at a USHL team, or go to the BCHL and be a top 6 forward? Now, what are you as a player? What are you hoping to be recruited as to college? What are your strengths as a player? That kind of comes to factor. If you've always been an offensive producer for your teams in minor hockey, your prep school, or wherever, do you want to go to an environment where that's going to be an emphasis for you every single day, or do you need to round out your game and go somewhere where you're getting more structure and you're being required to become a third line player where you can check and play defensively? So it's a bit situational that way.
That's really interesting. So just for our listeners, maybe there's some kids or maybe there's some parents that are listening to, there's a certain amount of roster spots that you can have, certain amount of imports that you can have, people coming in from different provinces or people coming in from the US or different countries. What are some of those rules that you have to follow in terms of, the amounts of people from different places you can have on your team?
Yeah, the biggest one is just the imports. So you get 6 imports, which are essentially non-Canadians. And they have to be Americans. We shouldn't say non-Canadians because it's different. USHL, North American League. There's Europeans, Russians, guys coming over. The CJHL, BCHL is under that umbrella. It's Canadians and Americans. So any Canadian or Canadian citizens considered a non-import. So you get as many of those as you want.
So you can have basically your whole team from like Ontario and Quebec if you really wanted
to. Essentially. And I mean, there's some limitations on living out of the province, certain ages, things like that. Like
right.
Under 18, you're restricted to play within your province, so you're not traveling all over the country to play. But beyond that, there's guys that kind of come from everywhere, all across the country and all across the U.S. now too, which is cool. I think it's good. Obviously, it begins to the better players you have in your league. It's better for the quality of competition. It's better for the kids that are playing against better players. So ultimately, that usually raises their own level.
Love it. Well, you're starting an organization from scratch now. And this is an expansion team, expansion franchise in an awesome city in I guess you can call it Eastern BC. And it's going to be an amazing spot, a town that's very, very much a hockey town that's getting its own team finally. But when it comes to building that team from scratch, basically, what's important to you? What are like maybe 2 or 3 things as you're building this team that you think is really important?
From players, you meaning more so?
Players, culture, whatever. Like,
yeah, I think just being aligned with everything that we want to do from top to bottom. I think that's really one of the really cool things that we've kind of settled on. Ownership down. Even to myself. A lot of good conversations with my boss Nathan about everything. About what the vision for what we're going to do is. What our standards are going to be like, what our expectation levels are like, and then instilling that in our players and recruiting players that are going to fit that and that want that. and ultimately everybody wants to win. There's no question. That's an element of this, but at the same time, there's a whole other process that goes on at that age group, particularly where it's maturing, it's growing and rounding out as players, as human beings, and that's one of the things that's going to be an element of what we're going to do too is making sure that we're targeting the right types of kids that want to come in and put the work in, and we're going to have the resources. We're going to have myself, our coaching staff. We're there to help them achieve their goals, right, and move on and get to college, get the Division I opportunity if they can, if they've earned it, and help them earn that. And so that's certainly an element of it, and bringing the right kids in that see that as their end goal and want to use the resources that we have in order to do so, and playing in a way that the town's going to be proud of too. I think just kind of that, having a high work ethic and competitive spirit, and a team that they can watch any night of the week and be happy to support, and that's kind of the beauty of being in a hockey market.
I love that. And just kind of going along with some of the things that you were saying there, junior hockey it's a tough league in a sense because it's still very much a developmental league. Everybody that's playing junior hockey has aspirations and playing at a higher level. They don't want to end at junior hockey. So how do you rectify that with having to win? Because in junior hockey, you're paid to win. There's people that are coming that are paying your salary, the town people, and so people want to win. People want to win championships and stuff like that. But also, it's very much a development league. So coming in there, how do you balance the two?
I think it's a fair question. I think a lot of it. I would also argue that if you're developing the kids the right way, that you get winning.
Yeah.
Winning is it's funny. I was listening to the podcast, you read books and stuff, and they talk about results. Well, result is a result. That's kept running through my head. It's the result of everything else that you're doing. It's one element of it. It's a scoreboard. It's a 2-2. It's a 3-0. It's a 3-1. But that's just a result. You forget about the fact that the result is just by nature of the word something that comes from something else. And so what are you doing every other day of the week? What are you doing in practice? What are we doing off ice? What's our sleep like? Our nutrition? And I'm a believer that if you're developing, as a player, you're developing each and every one of your players. They improve by 5-10% over the course of a year. I'm not a genius, but I think your team's going to improve by 5 or 10% as well, at the very least. And if everybody shoots puck that much harder, they're that much quicker, they're seeing the game that much faster. I think you're bound to have a better team by the end of it. And so part of it, I think the development piece is almost necessary in order to have the winning elements and achieving great things. And sure, there's times where there's some growing to do, but I think the kids that you're going to be coaching and this the modern athlete, as they're calling it, I think that investing in them and pouring yourself into them and them trusting you comes through that development process and showing them what you're willing to give them in terms of knowledge, experience, your time, and all of that kind of stuff. And in the long run, I think that brings your team closer together, and ultimately those are the teams that tend to win. So I think you do all those things right, and you kind of put the right cocktail together. I think you can have a successful team.
Awesome. I love that. I've never heard that. The results are the results. That's really cool.
They were talking. That was more so just rolling in my head. It's like thinking about as a coach, everyone talks about the process, right? The process.
It's not sexy anymore. Everybody talks about the process, so nobody wants to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that, but it's true, and that ultimately leads to the results. And if we're going to sit here and just worry about results all the time, which you have to, it's part of the job, it's part of competitive sports. It's a great immediate feedback, right? It tells you whether you're good enough or not. It's kind of cool that way, right? I think it's off topic, but you're thinking about life in general, and there's so many things we do. You raise your kids, or the conversations you have, or the decisions you make financially, or whatever. You don't see the results for 6 months, a year, 5 years, 10 years. Of what you're doing. Hockey and sports is cool because you get your result today. Everybody wants it today, so you get that result today. Were we good enough or not? Did we beat Cornell or not? And what do we need to improve? We have that feedback right now. We can talk about it tomorrow. So it's kind of it's an immediate kind of feedback mechanism, and you just have to take it for what it's worth and understand that those results are things that you get at the end of each game. But what do you do in practice? The other 5 days of the week. Those are what ultimately give you those results, right? So finding a way to improve what you're doing there, and ultimately you hope to have have even better results next time.
Love that. Absolutely love that. Okay, one more question, number 10 for you. You've been a good sport.
Is this only 10?
It's only 10. Only 10. Well, I had 10 on here. It led to a few more other ones, but so you come in here and you've played college hockey, you've played pro hockey, you've coached at the level as well. Had a lot of great experiences in your journey. If you were to offer any advice to any kids that have aspirations of playing at the junior hockey, college hockey, professional hockey level, what are one or two things that you would say to those kids?
What would I say? I would say, yeah, to be a little different. Like, yeah, you're going to have to be. If you really want to do great things. I mean, you're talking about the greatness movie, things like that. I think is that it takes some uncommon things, whether it's a will, sacrificing time, going to the movies, doing things your peers are doing. Because you want to do something a little bit different. You want to achieve something a little bit different, whether it's playing college hockey, whether it's playing pro hockey. It comes with some other things that you're going to have to do. You see it all the time with the Chicago Bulls thing there, the Last Dance, and some of these other things where now you're starting to get peel back the onion on what makes people great at what they're doing. And it's something that's unusual, right? It's not something that everybody's doing. And not being afraid to kind of step out and challenge the norms a little bit would be my best advice. Kids kind of get nervous about wanting to be different or not fitting in, or hey, why is he eating that way when it's easy to just eat junk food. Well, he's worried about the stuff he's putting in his body, or how much he's drinking, or how much he's sleeping at night. He wants to get 8 hours, 10 hours. You got to do something a little uncommon, and you can't just do it for a week, 2 weeks, a month. It takes a pretty good commitment to it in order to do that. And so that would be the biggest thing. I don't know if, it's kind of got a few different facets on it, whether that's, your commitment to developing skill, strength and conditioning. Are you doing extra? Are you doing just kind of the bare minimum? Are you doing what everybody else is doing? And kind of stepping outside of that and trying to stretch that a little bit and do that a little bit extra, where it's going to kind of, over the time when you accrue all of that extra that you've done, hopefully it's going to give you that just extra edge when you're going to need it, and give you an opportunity and prepare you that much better for whatever that next step might be. So that's probably the biggest one, I think, for me. Is that I think there's a lot of kids that are going through BANA, midget, junior hockey, college hockey, that are just wanting, find it easier, right, to just kind of do what the group is doing and go with the group. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you don't always remember the group. You're going to remember the individuals, and those are the guys that are going to get the opportunity to move beyond.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned stepping out and doing something different and The Last Dance, because the final episode was just yesterday, and you look at like the main characters, let's call them, in The Last Dance. Like Phil Jackson played his college basketball at North Dakota.
Yeah.
Scottie Pippen was one of 12 and played his college basketball at Central Arkansas. Like, Michael Jordan got cut in high school. Eventually, he ended up playing at North Carolina, which is a big school, but like still uncommon path for what we think Michael Jordan is. Like Dennis Rodman played at like Southeast Oklahoma State or something like that. Steve Kerr was a walk. Like, everybody has a different path. And I feel like everybody kind of thinks getting to the highest level is just like a straight and narrow curve, and you're the best from when you're, in diapers all the way up until you get to that highest level. But it doesn't work that way. There's so many ebbs and flows to it, and there's so many different ways to get there, that you just got to be the best at your own path, and whatever situations come your way, whether you don't make a team, whether you have to play a certain role on a different team, whether you get injured. I mean, there's so many different factors that are outside your control that go into it. But just understand that happens, and everybody has a different path. There's no one way to get to the top, and just embrace that differentness, which goes along the lines of what you were talking about.
Yeah, and you're right. There's no one path to it. I mean, there's a million different ways to get to the end goal, and what is success, right? Is it playing in the NHL? I would hope that that's not success for everybody. It's a great level of success, but I mean, you can go on and play a couple of years of junior hockey and play Division III hockey. You play club hockey somewhere and have a great educational experience. And is that success? I'd like to think so. in some way, shape, or form. And everybody's level of success can be different, but yeah, it's unique when you hear about those guys with the Bulls and where they came from. I think everybody assumes that they all played, North Carolina or Duke or some of the big schools, and that they just ended up in the Bulls. But I mean, the reality is I haven't watched the last two, so don't spoil them for me. But
okay.
but hearing, even hearing about Jordan getting cut, but what happened when he got cut, it just like he was just wired differently.
Yeah.
Right? It motivated him in a way that was just amazing. And he goes out and then he gets the growth spurt and does all that stuff. But if he hadn't gotten cut, is he as motivated? Does he spend all summer working on his skills? I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, that was an unreal documentary. I won't spoil anything. But before I let you go, what's the one thing you're most excited about in this new venture that you have going on?
Ooh, most excited about. There's a lot. There really is a lot. I mean, Cranbrook itself, hockey town, had a Western League team. They left a year ago. Are excited to have a program back. I think it's the right town. It's the right town, size town for the BCHL, and a great facility, great ownership, great everything for our players. That's exciting for me personally. Obviously, to be a head coach is exciting. I think you spend some time and as us as assistants, you're always thinking, oh, did this work? Did it not work? Would I have done that? Maybe I've done something different. Now you get to drive the bus, right? So you get the keys to the car and you get to find out if it's going to work. And I think that's exciting for me. So being a head coach and getting to work with players and in a different environment than college, an environment where when I talk to our players, recruits, when you're at the college level, you're talking about junior hockey as a year to be a hockey player. You're not in school, you're not in college, you're not running from class to the rink to the library to study hall or anything like that. You can stay late if you want to. You can lift weights, you can shoot pucks, but have guys where they're focused on being hockey players and maximizing their abilities as hockey players. Will be a fun, new angle to be working on with players. Our guys were great. There's no question. It's not, the college level it's a different level of athlete. Everything's a different level. But these guys are busy, and Ivy League institutions, as you know, they're really busy, and they were great. They were attentive and everything like that. So it's nothing against them, no way, shape, or form. But it's just a different level where now you're getting to guys are going to be around the rink a little bit more. They're going to be looking for more, whether it's video, whether it's on ice stuff, skill development, and then really being able to hone my craft as a coach and more games, more reps, more everything. So it'll be good that way. I'm excited for it.
Love it, man. Well, we wish you nothing but the best of luck. I know you're going to kill it out there. Hopefully the season starts on time. Yeah, I know it's crazy, but certainly enjoy the process of it. And have a safe trip, safe move when you guys move across the continent. And we will certainly be in touch, that's for sure.
For sure, man. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, man. See ya.